think the bands are just quietening down before we have this final speaker. He's a Barnsley lad, left school at 15 to work at Woolly Colliery. In 1963 he became an NUM delegate. By 1973 he'd risen to become president of the Yorkshire NUM, and in 1981 was elected president of the national NUM with a massive 70% of the vote. He'll be most famous around these parts as being the leader in the Great Strike of 84 to 85. Put your hands together, Arthur Scargill.
Chairman, comrades and friends, it is, as each speaker has said, an honour and an opportunity to be present today, not simply to talk about the past or even the present, but to analyse the future. When Rodney spoke, he paid tribute to Peter Heathfield. Peter Heathfield was the General Secretary of the NUM through those turbulent years, not only in 1984 and 5, but during those years when they tried to besmirch the reputations of the leaders of that strike. Peter fought back, as we all did, and we proved not only that we were telling the truth, but we demonstrated that the attacks upon us and upon a man like him and his integrity was because we fought back, we stood up, and we didn't give in. How many times have you heard the argument, leaders always give in, always sell out? Well, I'll tell you this, in 1984 and 5, the leaders of the NUM did not sell out and they didn't give in. And if there's one thing that all of us need to know, and all of us need to understand, is what's happening now. We've had a ballot with the British Airways cabin staff. We've had ballots with RMT members, and they go to the High Court and they say you forgot to send it to Mr. Jones, ballot invalid, you can't go on strike. Well, I'll tell you what, in my view, the leaders of those unions should have done, and I make no apology for it. They should stuff the law and tell the workers to come out on strike like the top universities did, and those who built the movement. You know, we're not going to get anywhere by going along with their standards. I recall we had a ballot in the NUM. It was a small majority of 87%, and they said that we were going to implement the ballot. Too late. 1 second too late. We spent 3 days in the High Court before Lady Butler-Schloss trying to decide which bong signalled midnight. Was it the first bong, the 6th bong, or the 12th bong? And I said to the executive, it's time we tell them, bong off, we're coming out. And quite frankly, throughout my career, I've always been told that you've got to follow procedures. I've always responded by the finest teacher I ever met in my life, my father, a lifelong communist, a lifelong committed fighter for the class that he represented. And I knew that when I was in struggle, you either went through procedure after procedure or you took action. For example, when I worked at Woolly, which I did for 19 and a half years, on one occasion they sacked me 5 times in 1 week. And 5 times the 2,800 men stopped work. It had more of an impact than all their ballots and all their arguments in court could ever do. But I'm sure that Rodney remembers, with the anti-trade union legislation in 1972, they decided to jail 5 dockers because they had broken the law. And I recall Vic Turner, one of them. He said, we were in prison and it looked as though we were there a year, 2 years, 10 years, because when they jail you for contempt, there is no time limit. He said, and suddenly we were summoned to the governor's office. He says, and there was a man there in funny breeches, a fluffy shirt, a wig, and a long staff. And he said, I, the official receiver, do hereby attend upon this day to say to ye, Vic Turner, and he named the others, that Her Majesty has ordered by the oath that you shall go forth from this place and be free. Bang, bang, bang. So Vic says, what's that mean? The governor says, you can go. He says, but the House of Lords said we couldn't. He said, but he says you can. He says, can I ask you a question? He said, aye. He said, how long have you had this job of official solicitor? He said, you mean me, sir, or my predecessors? Well, he said, both. Well, he said, my predecessors have had this job since 1456. But I've had this job for the past 40 years. He says, and how many times have you come with this stick and freed people? He said, this is the first. And I'll tell you why they freed him. It wasn't because of a technicality with the law. It was because 2 million workers had come out on strike and said we're not prepared to see workers victimised. That's the essence of the movement that we belong to.